This is Kerry Cork. After the Liberal Party lost the Victorian election last year, Peter Costello reflected on the fact the party had lost 20 state elections in a row. He said, we've got to make sure we are recruiting good people, that we've got to get our organisation together, that we've got to work on policy. You can't leave an election to the last 4 months. An election is a 4-year proposition, and right around Australia the Liberal Party has got to come to grips with this, and we've got to lift our game. The Liberal Party has now lost the New South Wales election, largely for the reasons identified by Costello, and John Howard has called on state Liberals to start work immediately on developing an alternative story so that when the next state election comes around, people will not only say that they are unhappy with Labor, but the other crowd have got an idea as to how to run the place better. New leader Barry O'Farrell will have to establish a structure that will permit the New South Wales Liberals to act as a coherent opposition over the next 4 years. Now, as Bruce Hawker has observed, the ALP's run of election losses during the 1990s meant it had to fundamentally rethink its attitude to intervention in the economy and reject the notion that states could manipulate the market. Since then, a line of Labor premiers have rolled out an identikit agenda: sound economic management illustrated by striving to attain or to keep AAA credit ratings, relatively strong rhetoric on law and order, and broad sympathy towards development, whilst showing sufficient concern about the environment so as to gain, even if through preferences, the support of Green inclined voters. Conversely, the Liberal Party has failed to enunciate a broad alternative direction, which has led them to losing elections in Queensland and New South Wales, even though there was a feeling that the long-serving governments in those states were past their use-by date. Well, once upon a time, you knew what the broad direction of the state Liberal Party was. During the days of Askin, Bolte and Court, the perennial tirades against Canberra meant that state Liberals stood for what would now be called subsidiarity, where decisions are taken as closely as possible to the citizen, with the centre only taking action where absolutely necessary. Under Kennett and Greiner, state Liberals clearly stood for the new managerialism, the establishment of contested markets, the subsequent removal of the state from the provision of services, support for national competition policy and so forth. With state Labor being seen to be better managers than the state Libs, and a federal Liberal government that is the most centralist in Australian history, no one has any idea about what a state Liberal stands for in the 21st century. Now, one possible thing that state Liberals could rally around is that being developed by former UK Conservative leader Ian Macken-Smith. The theme recognises that problems caused or aggravated by the growth in government cannot be corrected by a crude reduction of its size, but rather policy should deliberately foster the growth of what Edmund Burke called the little platoons of civil society: families, neighbourhood associations, private enterprises, charities and churches. This is because these institutions are perceived to be the real source of economic growth and social vitality. Testing government policy against its effect on the little platoons can give state-based Liberals something to say during the term of a parliament, and can form a basis subsequently of a platform from which a coherent set of policies can be developed. Should this happen, suitable community-based candidates may feel able at least, to offer themselves as candidates. In that way, the weaknesses identified by Costello will be eliminated. That said, if an appeal to the little platoons is seen as undesirable, some alternative narrative must be developed quickly. Otherwise, at provincial level, Australia will become a one-party state with all the disadvantages that suggests. This is Kerry Cork.